Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Weekly Academics, and you are listening to Faiza and Inamdar. So this is the last and final podcast of the fourth chapter, and yes, I am including this in the fourth chapter, but this is kind of a quick recap of the third as well as the fourth chapter, because in this one we'll be dealing with the major differences between the early nationalists and the assertive nationalists. This will be a very small podcast, not much to remember, but just a quick recap of what we've already learned in the form of a differentiation table. So number one, we'll begin with the beliefs, then we'll move on to the methods of struggle, then we'll move on to the important eminent personalities, and then certain other factors also and objectives as well. Okay, so number one is the beliefs. So the beliefs of the early nationalists were that they had unlimited faith in British sense of justice. They asked for constitutional and other reforms within the framework of British rule in India. And their third thing was that their methods of struggle were quite moderate. So basically, they had ultimate faith in British sense of justice. Okay, they believed that if the Britishers were convinced about the genuine grievances and the need of the reform, their demands would be fulfilled sooner. Okay, that was what the early nationalists believe. Now, what did the assertive nationalists believe? In contrast to the early nationalists, the assertives believed, and the assertives' beliefs were as follows. They had no faith in British sense of justice and fair play. Okay, they could see all the deceit that the British has done, whereas the early nationalists, they saw all the good that they brought to the country. Now, the assertives, they also believed that the pray, please, petition formula would no longer work. The 3P formula would no longer work. And they also believed that if their demands had to be fulfilled, then they had to use sturdy methods and put pressure on the government, and thus they provoked self-reliance, self-determination. So they believed in application of pressure on the government. Okay, so that's the difference between their beliefs. Now moving on to the next point, that is the difference in their ultimate objectives. Now when we did the objectives of early nationalists, it was quite a complete podcast. It was a long one. So just a quick differentiation point can be that the assertives, for the early nationalists, the ultimate objective was a colonial form of self-government, a dominion status, whereas for the assertives, the ultimate objective was Swaraj, that is complete self-government. There were other demands also, like the assertives wanted ICSE examinations to be held simultaneously, legislative councils to be expanded, salt tax to be reduced, duty on salt, sugar to be reduced, and abolition of the duty, industrial growth, etc. There were quite a lot that we've done in that particular podcast. But to deal with the ultimate objective, the early nationalists wanted a colonial form of self-government, that is a dominion status, like in Canada and Australia in that particular time, whereas assertive nationalists wanted a complete self-government or Swaraj. Okay, that's the difference between in their ultimate objectives. Now moving on to the third point, that is the difference in their methods of struggle. Now the key points to note over here is, for the early nationalists, they go as follows. Their method was agitation through petitions to the high government officials, resolutions, meetings in towns, cities and countrysides, distribution of leaflets and pamphlets, preparing memorandum for the government committees, and delegation of leading politicians to England. I'll just repeat it quickly. Their method of struggle was to agitate through petitions, resolutions, meetings, distribution of leaflets and pamphlets, preparing memorandums for the government committees, and sending delegations to England of the leading politicians of India. Okay, that was their method. Okay, that was the 6 key things to note in the method of struggle of early nationalists. When we look at the methods of the assertive nationalists, they are a bit different, and they include Swadeshi and boycott as the key factors. Revivalism is one of the most important factors, and national education. And in national education also, it was divided in 4 categories: secular education, religious or moral education, political education, and vocational or industrial education. So for the assertives, the most important was Swadeshi boycott, revivalism, and national education. So they adopted a bit sterner methods, whereas the early nationalists, they had quite moderate methods. Okay, so that was the third point. Moving on to the fourth point of differentiation is the prominent leaders. So in case of assertive nationalists, the three prominent leaders that we saw were Dadabhai Nauroji, Surendranath Banerjee, and Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Whereas in case of assertive nationalists, the three important leaders, three eminent leaders that we studied were Lal Bal Pal, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal, the trio, right? So that's another point of difference. Now, another one point of difference is the amount of suffering. So this is the last point actually. The assertive nationalists, they did not really suffer a lot because they tried to use all constitutional methods. So they did please pay petition formula, right? So they did not have to go to jails, or they were not arrested for seditious writings and seditious meetings and seditious speeches, because they always tried to do whatever they did under the appreciation for the government. Okay, they never ever harshly criticize the government. Yes, they had critiques for the government. Yes, they expressed their opinion, but in quite moderate ways. Whereas the assertive nationalists, they used sterner methods, bolder moves, and therefore they were the ones who suffered a lot. Like they went to jail a lot of times. Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Lala Lajpat Rai was sent to Mandalay. Bipin Chandra Pal was also imprisoned for a long period of time. Lala Lajpat Rai died due to a lathi charge that happened during the Simons Commission. And they were charged for seditious writings, for seditious meetings, and a lot of points have been there where the assertive nationalists, not just these three, but all the others have also suffered. I will just recap the format of the differentiation that I just did. We did their beliefs, ultimate objective, method of struggle, the eminent leaders, and suffering. Okay, these were the 5 points of differentiation that we just discussed in this podcast. And this is also recap of kind of half of both the chapters. The rest half of both the chapters includes the chronological event parts, right? Like the Surat split, partition of Bengal, etc. So yes, that's it for this podcast, and I'll get back to you next with the next chapter that will be about the Muslim League, factors leading to the formation of Muslim League. In the next chapter, we'll be doing that. I'll get back to you soon. Until then, if you want to listen to something soothing, relaxing, calm, beautiful, you can always listen to podcasts made by Dr. Sabiha Inamdar, which is Your Life in My Voice. And yes, until then, as I've always said, try to make out charts of these chapters because they're quite easy to recap when you have your exams. So with charts, it's quite easy to recap at least half of both the chapters completely well. Okay, so yes, you listen to Faiza and Inamdar at Weekly Academics, and I'll get back to you soon with the next chapter, which will be the 5th chapter. Until then, stay home, stay safe, be healthy. Bye-bye.